What if Africa, 54 countries, 1.2 billion people, united as one military force? Could this African army take on NATO, the world's strongest military alliance? Today we're diving into strategies, tactics, and confrontations in an epic hypothetical battle that could change global power forever. Before we get into the tactics, let's look at the basics. NATO includes military powerhouses like the US, the UK, and France, controlling over 3 million active soldiers and some of the most advanced weaponry in the world. Africa, on the other hand, has over 1.2 million active military personnel spread across 54 nations. But what if Africa united? What if these armies came together to create one unified, disciplined force? To answer the big question, could Africa stand against NATO, we need to break it down into specific matchups. Let's compare firepower. Manpower. Africa's population dwarfs NATO's, giving Africa a potential advantage in sheer numbers. Countries like Nigeria and Ethiopia alone have over 200,000 active troops. Egypt's army, the strongest in Africa, has elite ground forces and a formidable air force. Technology. But numbers alone don't win wars. NATO has advanced stealth aircraft, drones, and naval forces that operate in every corner of the globe. The US alone spends more on defense than the next 10 countries combined, including most of NATO's European allies. Africa, while rich in manpower, lags in technology. In modern warfare, whoever controls the skies controls the battle. NATO has hundreds of fifth-generation stealth fighters like the F-35, equipped with precision-guided missiles. Africa would need to counter this with strong air defense systems. Egypt and South Africa possess some capable air defense technology, but they are scattered and outdated compared to NATO's. However, in a defensive war, Africa could employ guerrilla tactics, hiding anti-air systems, using the terrain to launch surprise attacks, and using drones to disrupt NATO's air superiority. NATO's jets are powerful, but they rely on large, visible bases. Those bases would become prime targets in African territory. But Africa's main vulnerability? Foreign military bases on its own soil. The US has its largest base in Africa, Camp Lemonnier in Djibouti. France maintains military bases in Senegal, Côte d'Ivoire, and Gabon. These outposts are designed to project power quickly across the continent. In any confrontation with NATO, these bases would be the first line of attack. A united African army would need to take swift action, either through diplomacy or force, to remove or neutralize these foreign bases. This would be the only way to prevent NATO from launching strikes from within Africa itself. When it comes to ground forces, Africa has some strong armies. Egypt's army is the best equipped on the continent, boasting modern tanks and elite infantry units. Nigeria's military is battle-hardened after years of fighting Boko Haram, and Ethiopia has extensive experience in both civil and external conflicts. But NATO's ground forces have the upper hand in logistics and mobility. NATO's rapid response units, supported by the most advanced tanks and armored vehicles, can move faster and more efficiently than many African militaries, which rely heavily on outdated equipment. To counter this, Africa would need to rely on guerrilla tactics, sabotage, and the knowledge of local terrain. Think about how smaller nations have stood up to superpowers throughout history. Vietnam against the US, or Afghanistan against the Soviet Union. Africa's massive landmass and diverse terrain would be a nightmare for any invading force. NATO might win battles, but it would struggle to win the war. Africa's geography offers strategic advantages. Whoever controls the Horn of Africa controls the shipping lanes between Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. The Suez Canal in Egypt is one of the most crucial waterways in the world, responsible for about 12% of global trade. In a confrontation with NATO, Africa could disrupt global shipping, causing an economic ripple effect that would hurt NATO's member states. A united African navy, although smaller than NATO's fleets, could still play a key role by focusing on protecting these choke points and using submarines or missile systems to threaten NATO's naval presence. So how could Africa stand a chance? Unity is key. Africa's current fragmented state, 54 countries with different political interests, is a weakness. But a united Africa with a central command structure, shared intelligence, and unified logistics could be a formidable force. Africa would need to invest in modernizing its military. Instead of relying on foreign powers for arms, Africa could develop its own weapons industry, strengthening self-reliance. Countries like South Africa already produce high-quality military vehicles, and others could follow suit. Strategic geographic advantage. Africa's geography offers incredible strategic advantages. NATO may have technological superiority, but Africa's diverse terrain could neutralize much of it. From the dense jungles of the Congo to the vast deserts of the Sahara, Africa's environment would make it extremely difficult for any foreign force to engage in a full-scale invasion. Take, for example, the Horn of Africa and the Suez Canal, both vital global choke points for trade and military movement. A united African military could control these areas, blocking vital NATO supply routes. By leveraging its geography, Africa could engage in a defensive strategy, forcing NATO to fight on African terms. The role of strategic alliances. Another key factor would be alliances. Africa wouldn't have to face NATO alone. Nations like China and Russia, who have vested interests in Africa's resources and geopolitical positioning, might come to Africa's aid. Both countries have been expanding their influence across the continent through infrastructure projects and military cooperation. These alliances could provide Africa with advanced military technology and intelligence, evening the odds in the face of NATO's overwhelming strength. But Africa would need to balance these alliances carefully to avoid becoming a pawn in larger global rivalries. The economic front. Wars aren't just fought on the battlefield, they're fought in boardrooms, on stock exchanges, and through economic power. Africa holds 30% of the world's mineral resources, from oil to precious metals and rare earth minerals used in modern technology. If Africa were united, it could control the flow of these resources. Imagine the impact of cutting off NATO countries from vital African resources. Africa could use its economic leverage as a weapon, imposing sanctions, raising prices, or forming new trade alliances with non-NATO countries. Controlling these resources would give Africa a powerful bargaining chip. So could a united African army stand against NATO? In a direct confrontation, NATO's technological and logistical advantages would be overwhelming. But war isn't just about who has the better weapons. It's about strategy, resilience, and unity. If Africa stands together, invests in its own future, and focuses on defending its resources and sovereignty, it can become not just a military power, but a force for global change. What do you think? Can Africa unite and defend itself against the world's strongest alliances? Let us know in the comments below.